So, have you ever actually stopped to think about what killed the cassette tape? For decades, analog formats, things like cassettes and vinyl records, they were the absolute undisputed kings of the music world. They were physical, they were tactile, and they were just deeply ingrained in our culture. But then, almost overnight, in the grand scheme of history, an entirely new era dawned. So I really want you to ask yourself, what initially drove that massive shift away from the analog tapes and records we all loved and ushered in the digital era of the 1980s?
Well, to answer that, we have to look at one of the most fascinating technological leaps in consumer history. I mean, we went from the physical friction of a diamond needle literally dragging through the grooves of a vinyl record, which, let's face it, caused wear, tear, and the occasional heartbreaking scratch, to the pristine, futuristic beam of a laser reading digital code. Just think about that leap for a second. On one side, you've got physical degradation and limited runtime, and on the other, digital precision, absolute zero physical friction, and a massive 80 minutes of uninterrupted music. It was a real game changer.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the captivating history of the recording industry's most lucrative yet ultimately self-destructive physical format, the audio compact disc. We're going to explore how it became a massive cultural juggernaut, how it absolutely revolutionized industry economics, and how the very technology that made it so incredibly successful, well, it ultimately laid the groundwork for its own downfall. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with music's creative destruction, move from needles to lasers, discuss the CD as the yuppie status symbol, dive into exploiting the music rights, look at the internet piracy threat, and wrap up with the decline of physical formats. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Music's creative destruction.
Have you ever heard of the economist Joseph Schumpeter? He coined this brilliant term called creative destruction. It's basically the idea that an incumbent product or technology must inevitably make way for a superior substitute. And this theory perfectly describes the recorded music industry. Every single new music format inherently destroys the dominant one that came before it. Think about it. The cassette largely destroyed vinyl's dominant position simply because it offered portability. You could finally play your music in your car. Then, the CD arrived to completely destroy the cassette by offering vastly superior sound quality while keeping that portability. It's just this relentless cycle of innovation and replacement.
Section 2. From needles to lasers.
Now, the sheer speed of this disruption was absolutely staggering. The compact disc was a joint invention by tech giants Philips and Sony, and it commercially launched in 1982. A mere 5 years later, by 1987, it was already matching LP sales, moving close to 100 million units in that year alone. And by 1991, it officially overtook cassette sales. This was incredibly rapid adoption. In less than a single decade, a brand new space-age technology completely upended decades of analog dominance. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the raw sales numbers, it was really about the psychology of the consumer. By removing the needle from the groove and swapping it for a laser, the CD eliminated physical wear and tear from excessive plays. Suddenly, the CD was being touted as this seemingly permanent archive for your music. You didn't have to worry about scratching your favorite album anymore, or the tape getting completely eaten by your car stereo. This profoundly revolutionized the perceived value of recorded music. People really felt like they were investing in a permanent, indestructible library.
Section 3. The yuppie status symbol.
Now, when the CD first arrived on the scene, it was seriously expensive. Back in 1983, a CD cost about $21.50. To put that into perspective, that was a massive premium at the time. Because of this price tag, it initially functioned almost like a luxury good. Owning a CD player was kind of like showing off a high-end sports car. It was the ultimate flex for the 1980s yuppie generation. It just had this incredible, futuristic sci-fi appeal to it. But there was another massive cultural shift happening at the exact same time: the rise of MTV. With vinyl, that large album sleeve was a big visual canvas. But as CDs physically shrunk the packaging, MTV moved all that visual energy directly onto the television screen. The CD paired perfectly with this new high-budget pop superstar era. It was crisp, it was premium, and importantly, it was super easy to stock in massive quantities at retail stores. And the marketing? Masterful. Absolutely masterful. The core promise was pure, perfect sound forever. But, well, there's a fascinating bit of irony here. Despite all this slick, futuristic marketing promising eternal perfection, digital formats did not magically repeal the laws of entropy.
In reality, early digital discs were highly subject to degradation. Actually, scratch that whole forever idea, because the dyes used in early manufacturing meant some of those discs actually became totally unplayable within 10 to 15 years. It wasn't forever at all, but man, the illusion of permanence was a wildly powerful selling point.
Section 4. Exploiting the music rights.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is how the major players masterfully orchestrated this transition. First, Sony and Philips established the standard for the CD hardware. Then, in a stroke of absolute corporate genius, they offered a very low royalty fee to other manufacturers. This all but guaranteed their technology became the undisputed global standard, meaning they were profiting from almost every single CD ever made. Meanwhile, the record labels looked at this and saw a gold mine. In a period of stagnating sales, they systematically persuaded consumers to go out and repurchase their entire existing back catalogs. You loved the Beatles on vinyl? Great, go buy it again on CD. And to sweeten the deal, they started utilizing a value-added strategy. They introduced deluxe versions and massive box sets with bonus tracks just to extract even more money from their most dedicated fans.
And let me tell you, this strategy was so remarkably successful that it turned the entire industry into a financial juggernaut. Just listen to this staggering number: 95.5%. That was the CD's peak share of total industry revenue in the United States by the year 2002. Basically the whole pie. Huge margins, drastically lower production costs, and tight, ironclad control over global distribution made the CD quite possibly the most lucrative physical product in the entire history of music.
Section 5. The Internet Piracy Threat. But as we know, nothing lasts forever. The rapid expansion of the internet caused a sudden, seismic cultural shift. We shifted away from valuing physical objects and moved straight into consuming virtual goods. With physical CDs, the labels had complete, total control over distribution, fixed premium pricing, and physical retail space. But virtual goods, they changed the whole shebang. The rise of peer-to-peer file-sharing networks like Napster, coupled with decentralized internet distribution, entirely stripped the industry of its monopoly. It definitely brought incredible new distribution opportunities, sure, but it also brought the massive, terrifying threat of illegal piracy.
To really understand exactly when the dam broke, consider this staggering little fact. In 2001, for the very first time ever, consumers purchased more blank CDs than pre-recorded ones. Just let that sink in for a moment. People were overwhelmingly using their home computers to rip and burn their own discs. This specific data point shows exactly when the ultimate market power began to shift away from the major record labels and fell directly into the hands of everyday consumers.
Section 6. Decline of physical formats. The data trends across major global markets illustrate this collapse perfectly. Notice the incredibly rapid, almost violent spike and subsequent collapse of CD sales in the United States. It looks like a steep mountain peak. Compare that directly to the trends in Japan, where older analog methods and eventually even the CD itself saw much longer, gentler retention curves. But, regardless of the geography, the trajectory was permanently set. The golden era of the dominant physical format was undeniably coming to an end.
And that brings us right to today, the post-CD era. Streaming has almost entirely replaced physical ownership. Music has essentially become a virtual good, just living invisibly in the cloud. But interestingly enough, physical formats haven't vanished entirely. Instead, they've shifted from being mainstream everyday utilities into objects of what we call curatorial consumption. Vinyl records and cassettes have actually returned, not because they are the most efficient way to listen to music, obviously, but because they are nostalgic, cultural products. They offer this tangible, beautifully curated experience that a digital playlist simply can't replicate.
To conclude this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. The CD was once a shimmering symbol of the future. Then it became an absolute cash cow, and now it's rapidly becoming a retro artifact. In a world where we have access to literally infinite virtual streaming, where music is just data on a server, what physical objects from today's world will we miss tomorrow? How are we going to value the media we consume when we can no longer actually hold it in our hands? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I really hope it changes the way you look at the next shiny piece of plastic you happen to come across.